What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? It's Bryan Clayton back at you for another monthly mentor session answering you guys' questions. Let's jump into it. Let's see what we got going on. All right. This month's first question is from Joshua Grant. How do I need to go about setting up a system to hire and develop a new team member? I am a welding and fabrication business. We specialize in handrails, but have been getting a lot of other custom job shop work. I have two other people on my team, and the workload is starting to overload us. Where I live, it's getting difficult to find skilled workers. I am more than willing to teach people that want to be a part of my team. I just need to do it in a way that is confident. Okay, so in your type of business, that's oftentimes one of the biggest like log jams is finding talent, training people, and developing a system to do that. A lot of times when you're in a service-based business, I used to have a landscaping company and ended up growing it to 150 people. Sold that business in 2013, and so I had to kind of like get good at training because when we first started, it took like 3 months to get somebody trained to become a decent technician, and in that business, there's high turnover. So we would spend 3 months training somebody, and then we would only keep them like 9 months or a year. So you kind of have to get good at both sides of that equation. You have to get good at keeping people in terms of developing incentives and developing ways for them to make more money with you than they can your competitors if they just give you 110 or 120%. So you have to figure out that side of the equation. But your question is more on the front side of the equation. How do you create a system that will train these guys? And so the best way to do it is to hand crank it first. And so, like with your next hire, just try to set a goal to have them trained up in maybe a month. I imagine like fabrication, like what you're talking about, might take a year, two, maybe even 5 years to get good at it. Well, maybe a month's a little aggressive, but maybe let's say 6 months and create welding fabrication university, and literally like brand it, like whatever your business is called, uh, Grant's Custom Fabrications University, and try to create like a curriculum where every day or every week they will go through a set of training to build on. So it's like maybe day one is like just cutting metal. Like how do you work a chop saw and cut metal from like rough stock down to stuff we can use. I don't know your business, but like going through a certification process for maybe the 12 or 13 things to get through level one. And so level one might be a good assistant. And then level two might be something where you can start fabricating and welding a little bit. And level three might be, you can be on your own and make stuff. And then level five is craftsman, And so maybe every level, and I'm just thinking out loud here, this may not be how it shakes out for you, but every level is a month. And so every day there's a set of curriculum, and then you have to take a test to pass that level and go through that kind of course that you've created for them. Is a way that you create a training system, and so there's all kinds. The good news is all kinds of online systems that you can use these days to help you with this, where you can literally create videos and create a quiz and just walk them through Grants Fabrication University. And it might take you a year or two to develop this process. So this is an example of working on the business. Working in the business is just welding metal together all day long. Working on the business is developing an employee training system. So this is an example of working on the business. You might say, I have no time to do this. Well, this might be a Sunday thing. You come in on Sunday, you're taking videos, you're uploading it to the course software, you're creating the quizzes, and then you're constantly making this thing better and better and better. Would be how I would approach this sort of thing. And I would set a goal to have this system set up in 6 months or a year, and then you can kind of pump three people through that and reduce the time it takes to get somebody from like craftsman status, might be 2 or 3 years, reduce that down to 6 months. And the other thing too is you're going to be constantly improving this system over and over again. It's not going to be a static thing. So as people go through it, you're like, you know what, I need to add this piece or I need to take this piece out. So nail it, then scale it. Work on the business, not in the business. Hope that helps. Next question is from Darby Scott. Let's see. When you have a fleet of vehicles, should you aim to keep all vehicles out in the field every day or keep one as a backup in case maintenance is required? We have a fleet of mobile pet grooming vans. They are out 3 out of 6 days, in which all of our vans are on the road. We are considering having all vans on the road all 6 days. We are closed on Sundays, which basic maintenance for things like oil changes, repairs can be done in-house by our mechanic. Bigger mechanic fixes require vans to be in the shop, and which are always closed on Sundays. My concern is whenever we have a van off-road and something comes up, requires a week or more repairs, which actually happens every quarter to at least one of our 3 vans. We have to pull employees from regular schedules, which affects their pay. Okay, I get it. It's a mess. I have dealt with this firsthand. Like I mentioned in the previous question, I had a landscaping company before starting Green Pal, which is my current business. But before Green Pal, I had a landscaping business that we had 90 trucks going out every day. So if you could imagine, you've got 6, which is 6 headaches. We had 90 headaches, and so the short answer is yes. You need to have backup equipment because stuff will break down, and you don't want to interrupt the system. You don't want to interrupt customers getting serviced, employees getting their pay. Because if they're having to pull double duty with somebody else, they're not going to be able to make as much money, so on. So yes, you need to have some padding in there, and it may just be your personal vehicle. Maybe if you've got, let's see, hold on, how many vans? We have a fleet of mobile pet grooming vans. They're out 3 out of 6 days, in which case all of our vans on the road, considering having all vans on the road all 6 days. Doesn't say here how many vans. If it's like 3, then maybe your personal vehicle is one of them, and maybe that one's not as nice, but you've got 1 spare. If it's 10, then you probably need to have 1 sitting around that could be a backup. And maybe the 10 that are out there every day are a little newer. They're a little late model, and the one that's sitting around idle is kind of maybe a 10 or a 20-year-old van, but it's one that could buy you a week. Because the other thing too is when you have an asset-heavy business where you're having to buy trucks, equipment, things like that, it's really challenging to not get into a lot of debt and to not, take on leases for all of this stuff. And one of the reasons why I was able to sell my last company, which was an 8-figure business, I was able to sell it because I had all of these trucks, all of this equipment, and all of it was paid for. In my last business, a lot of my competitors, they might have had an $8 million company, but they also had like $7.5 million in debt, whereas my business was multi-million dollars in value and had no debt. So I would encourage you to, if these vehicles have loans, pay them off as quick as you can, and then try to grow debt-free in terms of buying new vans and things like that, or maybe used vans that are okay. And then the backup van can be a used one, maybe a 1998 model or something like that, and that'll kind of buy you a week here and there. So the short answer is yes. I recommend having some redundancy. The redundancy doesn't have to be that nice, and maybe even it's your personal vehicle that you ride around every day, and then you can kind of loan it to the company if need be. And the other thing too is that spare van, you need to run it at least once or twice a month, because when because when you go to use it, if it hasn't been running in 2 or 3 months, it may not fire up, and so that's, what's the point of even having it sitting around? Tagging it, titling it, insuring it, all of these things. The other thing would be to develop a relationship with a local, maybe rental shop. Like maybe if somebody could rent you a van for a week if you were in this emergency. But then again, there's probably all kinds of equipment and stuff in there, so that may not work. But that's something to think about. Next question is from Ricardo Delgado. How do I start working more on the business versus in the business? When do I start backing off the day to day and start thinking more strategically? I'm building my barbershop. It seems like I'm focusing on team building because I'm working 50, 60 hours a week in the business. Should I hire somebody to help me with the small things? It's a good question. It's an important one. And the thing is in the early days, you're doing three things. You're working on the business, you're working in the business 50 to 60 hours, you're working on the business, and you're working on yourself. And the reality is, in my experience, I've built two businesses from scratch to 8 figures in revenue. In the early days, the first 2 or 3 or 4 years, it's 7 days a week. Maybe Monday through Friday, you're working in the business. You're making sure people are getting their haircuts like they should. You're making sure customers are happy. You're making sure the shop opens on time, making sure the shop closes on time. And you're just making sure the trains run like they should. And then maybe Saturday, or whenever you're closed, Monday or whatever, you work on the business. You just try to get 5 or 6 or 7 good hours of working on some sort of system to make your life easier. So it could be an employee training system, like we talked about in the first question, or it could be a marketing system. You're like literally looking at, like, how do we get people in the front door, or it could be an operation system. It's, how do we make sure that people don't have to wait for their appointment when they show up, or it could be an employee recruitment system. Whatever. You just focus on one system, maybe try to pump out one system per month, a set of standard operating procedures, and maybe even the software that goes with it, and implementing that in your business, working on the business. Because in the early days, you don't have the revenue to pay somebody to do everything while sit in an ivory tower and think strategically. Like, it's just not a luxury that we all have when we're starting a business. So the idea is maybe just come in on your day off, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. Maybe Monday's the day barbershops are closed, and you spend time to work on the business. And then also you have to think about working on yourself. You have to dedicate time to read books. Like in the vein of this question, you need to be reading the E-Myth. I'm sure you have read the E-Myth, or else you might not be asking this question, but you need to probably read it again. Another book you need to read is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There is a chapter in that book about delegation, which is what you're talking about. Delegating the right way, delegating to people from a standpoint of stewardship and not abdication. So really it's working on yourself. So working in the business, working on the business, and working on yourself are the three things you got to be doing when you're starting a business from scratch. And the reality is, it's 7 days a week. Anybody that's built a $1 million or $10 million business will tell you the first 3 or 4 years, it's 7 days a week, and because there's just not enough hours in the day. Hope that helps. Next question. I'm an independent artist, and it's called Art for Calm. I'm sorry, hold on, let me back up. The question is from Robin Turbin. What strategy would you use to speak with a gallery or company to help sell your art if you were an artist? I am an independent artist. It's called Art for Calm. I asked this to know how to approach possible galleries or sales agents to help increase revenues. Thank you so much. Okay, good question. I am not an artist. I am not terribly creative. So I respect the fact that you're building a business out of your art. That's awesome. One of the hard things about being an artist, doesn't matter if you're a musician or if you're a visual artist like what you are, or whatever sort of art form you're practicing, you also have to be a business person. So it's like a lot of times these things are at odds with each other, and a lot of times it's like the parts of the brain that drive you forward and help you become a successful business person are not the same parts of the brain that can sit down and just create a beautiful piece of art. So that's a challenge. The reality is if you're going to be hustling your own art, and you got to think like a salesperson. So you got to like almost put the creative, the creative part of your brain on pause for a minute, and you got to think like a hustler. And part of that might be um, just taking a pulse of what kind of artwork might sell better, because a lot of times, artists, they just want to express themselves through their art, and that may not be congruent with what is out in the marketplace and what people are buying. So there's kind of like a fine line between being a visionary and creating something totally unique and just hoping a market, develops around it, versus maybe just like putting a wet finger in the air and figuring out, okay, this is what people are looking for. Maybe I can do something a little different and kind of be somewhat congruent with what there's a market for. So that would be the place I would start first before I started trying to sell my product through different channels. I would try to put a finger on the pulse of what's out there, what is my competition creating, what kind of artwork am I creating, and where do I fit kind of in the market landscape in terms of what people are buying? What does my customer look like? Who are they? Why are they buying this art? What kind of motif does it go with in their house? Really trying to put myself in the shoes of the customer. I would try to really develop that first, and then that will help dictate your strategy on getting in with galleries. And I've never done that. I've never approached a gallery. I've never worked with somebody who has. But if I woke up in your shoes tomorrow, I would first try to look at what types of galleries are in my region, what types of art are they selling, how can I be kind of complementary or adjacent to that with my product line, and then I would just make it a no-brainer for them. I would really try to consign my art through them. I would really just try to figure out, okay, I will showcase this piece of art in your gallery for a year or 6 months, and if I sell it, I'll split the revenues with you 60-40 or whatever. I gotta think that's how the art market works. I don't know, but that would be how I would approach it. And then the other thing I would do is I would try to network with other artists that are already in these galleries, and try to figure out, okay, well, how are they getting that done? I would literally, like, I don't know if you're already tied in with other artists in your region, but I would try to figure out how they got their stuff in those galleries, and I would add value before I asked. So I wouldn't just call them and say, hey, how'd you how'd you get your artwork in that gallery? I would literally try to add value to them. It's like, hey, is there anything I can help you with? You need help transporting any artwork? Is there a big piece you need help moving around or something? I would literally try to add value, develop a relationship, and then try to learn from them how they figured out how to do that. So that's how I would approach it if I woke up in your shoes tomorrow. I gotta think that's how that system works, but maybe not. But I guess my main insight is start with the market first. Figure out how you fit in the market, because that's a place that I see a big disconnect between artists and selling their product. And this happens for you musicians too. It's like I have a buddy who's a musician, and some of his stuff is just terrible. And it's like, I know that that track you recorded in your basement with the tambourine, I know you loved it, and I know your soul was in it. But let's like figure out if somebody wants to buy that before we go press 1,000 CDs. You know, as extreme as that example sounds, like that's the dynamic I see a lot of artists they fall into. So start with the market, figure out where you fit in that, and then work backwards from there. All right, next question. Okay, next question is from background. I'm in the construction business. We have processes outlined so that the product goes on correctly and functions correctly. We also have this outline so that we can gauge how quickly the project can be done and set the expectations with the customer. Okay, so you've got a process, which is good. That's a good starting point, but maybe people aren't following it, and that's the problem. And That's frustrating. It's like I laid out this process, and you're not, like did you not follow it? What's going on? Why can't you just follow the instructions? And it's challenging. Like good management is getting people to do the things that you want them to do because they want to do it. So you have to figure out what the incentives are for them to do it correctly the first time. And then you also have to figure out maybe it's just that they're just not trained well enough. Like, maybe it's like a lot of times if you're in construction, these things are just technically they're difficult to do. Like if you asked me to go tile a floor in a bathroom right now, it would it would look terrible. It would take me a while to learn the tile trade, I guess you could say. So there could be a problem of it's not that they're not following directions, it's just that it just takes a little while to learn how to do this stuff. So that might be a training system, which is more or less the first question that we talked about today. So so think about that first. It's like ask yourself why 5 times. It's like why did they screw it up and put the window in incorrectly? Well, because they didn't follow this instructions correctly. Well, why didn't they follow the instructions correctly? Well, because they didn't even read it. Well, why didn't they read it? Well, because they didn't know they were supposed to. Well, why did they know they were supposed to? Well, it's because nobody trained them on the system. Okay, well, that's a training problem. If you ask why 5 times, well, they put it in, they read it, but they didn't really understand, and there's this other thing, they have to caulk under here, and they didn't know that. Okay, well, why didn't they know to do that? Well, actually, it wasn't in the checklist. Okay, well, we need to modify the checklist. And so it's like if you go through these exercises and ask why 5 times, why stuff's getting screwed up, a lot of times you'll get to the root cause, and you'll figure out where you got to fix. Is it the person you've got in the role just not getting it? Are they have a bad attitude? If that's not the case, okay, well, let's move on. Is it they didn't know they didn't have the skills to do it? Okay, well, we didn't train them long enough. Is it they didn't follow the instructions? Well, why didn't they follow the instructions? Well, the instructions weren't clear. Maybe we need a video here or something. Just go through this cycle of asking why 5 times over and over again, and you'll get to the root cause as to why whatever happened got screwed up. And the idea is to not repeat that same thing over and over again. Next question is also from Shane Noble. How do we show new employees, existing employees that our process for doing certain things with the jobs is the way we want them done? We are in construction, and the saying is there's 1,000 ways to get it done and still be the end result. Yeah, I don't like that saying. So we need to get that saying out of our business. We would like for them to do it our way so we can guarantee the outcome with how long we are in the jobs to be finished correctly. Okay, so yeah, there's 1,000 ways to get it done and still get the same end result. No, not in our business. There's one way, and this is the way we do it. This is why we do it this way. And if you don't want to do it that way, well, let's get you on somewhere else. So you'll never scale a business with people doing things 1,000 different ways. And so you got to get that standardization in place. You have to lay out the SOPs, standard operating procedures. This is how we do it here. This is why we do it this way. This is how we expect it to look when it's done. And this is how long we think it should take. And if you follow all of these things, this is what's in it for you. And it ain't just $15 an hour. So that might be the other problem is like, if you're just paying somebody $12 or $15 or $20 an hour and expecting excellence, it's probably not going to happen. You need to figure out some sort of incentive program where if they do it right the first time and get it done correctly and get it done under the time budget, there's some sort of incentive, maybe some profit share on a daily, weekly basis that's in that paycheck where they can get it. Like I mentioned in the previous question, good management is getting people to do the things you want them to do because they want to do it. And you're never going to get excellence from people just paying them an hourly wage. Book I recommend you read pretty much everything John Maxwell has ever written. He talks about different levels of leadership, and you want to get to as close to a level 3, 4, 5 leader as you can. Just paying somebody an hourly wage is level 1 leadership, and you're never going to get excellence from that type of dynamic, not in the construction trade. Next question is also from Shane. How do you hold managers accountable for when they don't do the things they need to for job deadlines? We have managers that manage the locations. Some of the managers just let their team slide with deadlines, and it affects the profitability. It also affects the schedule and moving another customer back to a different date. They let the jobs run too long, and it doesn't really affect them in any way. Okay, that's the problem, that last part of the sentence. It doesn't affect them in any way. You have to figure out a way to align the incentives with the direction of the company and the goals of the company and their goals. If you're just paying them a weekly wage or a salary and there maybe be a little bit of incentive, it's not going to be enough. 80% of their pay needs to be dictated by performance. Okay, did jobs come in under budget? Were customers happy? Did we have to go back and fix things? How you have to figure out the system to hold these folks accountable to do a good job, and not necessarily hold them accountable, reward them for hard work, because there's in the construction trade there's a lot of opportunity for what I call discretionary effort. So it's like staying a little longer. It's calling the customer back quicker. It's making sure that they go just the extra mile for the customer. It's like all of these things are discretionary and up to the individual technician, the individual manager. Well, you have to figure out an incentive to reward that. And so maybe if you're doing a $10,000 job and the gross profit on it's going to be $3,000, maybe the manager gets a cut of that. Maybe the manager gets 10% of that. I don't know. You have to figure that out and test these things. It's hard to implement this stuff, but if you have multiple locations, you said locations, maybe just try it with one. Try it with your best manager and figure out a way to pay them on an incentive basis and let them make as much money as they're wanting to make. Really make it to where they can make 30 or 40% more money if they would just bust it, if they would just give 120, 130%. And it might take you a year, 2 or 3 years to figure this out, but if you don't approach it this way, you'll always be banging your head against the wall with these types of questions. All three of these questions you've asked are kind of in the same, I guess you could say, kind of in the same realm of your business in terms of, okay, how do I get people to follow processes? How do I get people to do a good job? How do I get managers to make sure the trains run on time? And the incentive system around all of that in terms of how people get paid will solve a lot of those problems. Last question is from Jonathan Jean Baptiste. Scaling a mobile at-home car wash business to one similar to Uber, how tangible was it for you to grow it, and can you help guide me? Hey, how you doing, Jonathan? I think we chatted this week. I own a mobile detailing company that comes to your location, washes your car on the spot. I carry all the supplies in my van. Okay, so we talked about this week. Scaling a service-based business is just comes down to what they call unit economics. So how many man hours can I charge in a given day? How many man hours can I put out in a given day, and what can I charge for that? And what is the market willing to pay for, and is there a margin there? So if somebody is doing 3 cars a day and they make $100 each, that's $300. And so it took them 10 hours, so that's $30 an hour. What can I afford to pay that tech? I can afford to pay them, I don't know, 15. So there's $15 an hour of margin there, of what they call contribution margin. And is there a business there? Now these numbers are rough. Ideally it would be $1,000 a day, and you're paying the tech $30 or maybe you're paying the tech $15 an hour, and then the other 50% of his income is based on performance, and that's how you would scale this. And so you know I can make this work with just one crew. Now I know I can get 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, and make it work with just yourself. Pay yourself $15 an hour and pay yourself a bonus structure based on how many cars you wash in a day. and make it work for you, and then apply it to a second, third, fourth, and fifth tech. So nail it, then scale it. That's how I did it when I built a landscaping business with 90 trucks going out every day. It was basically multiplication, but I made it work with just my first crew first, just me. Made the economics, the unit economics work on that first crew, and then I multiplied it out to dozens of other crews. Hope that helps. Everybody, keep grinding on your businesses. Looking forward to talking to you guys next month. And anybody who wants to reach out to me, feel free to message me here on Facebook, and I'll hit you back. Everybody have a great day.